wait and see. I do hope that we will not see more escalations, not from Gaza and not from Lebanon or from Syria.
OK, for the moment, Daniel Aylon, thank you very much for speaking to us, Israeli diplomat and politician. So just to bring you up to date with the breaking news and the pictures that you're seeing on your screen, there has been a terrorist attack in Tel Aviv. One person has lost their life, one person has been killed, 6 people are wounded as we speak. These are the shots from the ambulance services at the scene. We believe that a vehicle ran or was rammed into passers-by, and that was the modus operandi of the driver in this terrorist attack. Has been described as a terrorist attack in which one person has been killed. This comes after the Foreign Office confirmed that 2 sisters were killed by a Palestinian gunman in the West Bank. And they've confirmed that they were, in fact, British nationals, and a 3rd person is seriously injured in that attack. We know that before that, Israeli forces had launched airstrikes on Lebanon and Gaza, and that was in retaliation for rocket attacks by Palestinian militants. So the very latest developments tonight is that one person has been killed in a terror attack in Tel Aviv, in which a car was rammed into pedestrians. 6 people remain wounded in hospital. We will, of course, update you on this developing story throughout the course of the evening. Well, let's return to Mr. Daniel Aylon, who's been speaking to us, Israeli diplomat and politician, about this developing story this evening in Tel Aviv. And we were discussing the future following on from these attacks and whether there would now be an escalation in violence. I'm wondering how you believe the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, will deal with this escalation in violence that we've seen?
Well, I think that he will have to act very judiciously, because I don't think that he would like destabilizing right now the region during this month of Ramadan. We are also celebrating here Easter and Passover. So I believe that I'd say the strategy will be to continue with the preemption using intelligence, and we have very, very good intelligence agencies. And the idea would be actually to try and spread a wide net in order to prevent or catch the terrorists before they come out. Unfortunately, even with the best net, there are some holes every now and then, and this is where we see these casualties and attacks. And I can tell you, Julian, that without the capability that Israel has in terms of security, counter-terrorism and intelligence, we probably would have had attacks like we see today, or earlier today. We could have seen it, dozens of times every day. The fact that we have only sporadic every other day is only because of preemption and the counterterrorism measures that we take.
Now, you've worked closely with Benjamin Netanyahu as his foreign policy advisor, and you were deputy foreign minister. Do you have confidence in him to de-escalate this situation?
Well, I believe that if we have seen, we have a record now. This is Netanyahu's 6th government. He has been the longest-serving prime minister ever in Israel. And he has always been very, very reserved and calculating in the use of power. And he would resort to, let's say, to military means or steps only as the last option. I think this will be still the case now. And of course, we will investigate who sent these terrorists. Many of them are what we call lone wolves. But even these lone wolves are part of a system, as I mentioned. It's part of the incitement, which goes in the schools over there, the Palestinian schools, at the Palestinian media, and mostly in the mosques. And again, mostly the mosques in this month of Ramadan.
Will there be retaliation from Israel following this latest attack?
I don't think so, because first of all, we'll have to find out who sent it. If indeed we can pin down responsibility to Islamic Jihad or Hamas, then there might be some action taken. We saw action taken, in Lebanon and in Gaza because it was a flagrant violation of our sovereignty with shooting all these dozens of missiles. When it comes to this terror attacks inside Israel, then we are trying to watch who it is. Of course, we are very much against a collective punishment, and it will be mostly intelligence work to see if the terrorist was part of a network, part of a cell. And if it was, the idea is to get into the cell and, again, try to arrest them before they can continue with perpetrating more terror.
So you're not ruling out retaliation of some sort?
Well, yes, but not just out of the cap. It will have to be very well investigated. And if indeed Hamas is the one that is sending it, then of course we will have to consider taking some harsh measures against Hamas and basically to restore deterrence. Since we've had the last operation in Gaza, deterrence was kept and it was quiet for quite almost a year. But it seems like every now and then, after some time elapses, the deterrence is being undermined, and sometimes you have to do something out of the ordinary to, I would say, to reinstitute deterrence. Basically, in order to save lives, sometimes you have to take some action.
Daniel Ayalon, thank you very much for speaking to us and taking us through what's been happening this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. So just for those who've just joined us, you can see that one person has died following a terror attack in Tel Aviv. And we have an update from the Israeli police. They're saying that the shooting incident on the promenade, a vehicle travelling from north to south, hit 4 people near the Charles Claw Promenade. A police officer who was at a nearby gas station heard a noise and noticed a car upside down and several people lying on the floor. The policeman approached the car together with the Tel Aviv municipality's police inspectors and recognised that the driver was trying to reach for the weapon he had in his possession. The policeman and the inspectors neutralised the driver and killed him. 1 man was killed, a woman was moderately injured, and 2 others were slightly injured. So that's the very latest from the police force in Israel. We can speak now to our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who joins us live from Jerusalem. So that the latest from the police, that they actually thought the attacker, the person driving the vehicle, was reaching for a weapon.
Yeah, I mean, as you were explaining there seems to be some confusion as to exactly what happened in this attack, whether or not the attacker rammed his car into the people first and then started firing, or whether or not he started firing first and then his car rammed into them. But the result is that 1 person is dead, 6 people are injured, and from what I'm reading, all of the casualties are foreign tourists. There's reports that the fatality is a man from Italy who was over here on holiday. Tel Aviv, of course, has been the subject of terror attacks in the past. Not too long ago, in fact, there was an attempt to shoot dead a couple of people who were outside a restaurant in Tel Aviv. And it comes amid very, very heightened tensions in Israel and the West Bank. There was earlier on today another terror attack in the West Bank when a Palestinian opened fire on a car containing 3 Israeli women, a mother and 2 daughters. The 2 daughters were shot dead. We now understand that they had British nationality as well. And so we are at the moment in a period of very, very heightened tensions. And it comes when the 3 major religions here, Christianity, Judaism and Islam, come together in religious holidays, Easter, Passover and Ramadan. Israeli intelligence had identified this weekend as being a moment of particular concern because of those religious holidays. And I think their warnings and their worries about what might happen we are playing out. We are seeing from a number of fronts, whether it be in the West Bank, whether it be the fact that rockets were fired out of Lebanon in northern Israel only yesterday, and then, of course, events in Gaza overnight and now in Tel Aviv. This is a series of violent attacks that are coming at Israel from a number of different directions.
And Ali, how unusual is it that this latest attack has taken place in Tel Aviv, an area that's a very popular tourist destination?
Well, I mean, Tel Aviv, when you sort of compare it to Israel, is a very different city. When you compare it to Jerusalem, it's a very different city to Jerusalem. It's far more secular, it's far more liberal. It has been the centre in recent months of anti-government protests because of the proposed judicial reforms. But Tel Aviv is often a centre of terror attacks because it is one of the major cities here in Israel. It's not quite as large in terms of population as Jerusalem is, and it doesn't have that sort of multicultural dynamic that Jerusalem has, given that this city is divided between east and west. But nonetheless, it is not a stranger to terror attacks at all. As I said, we saw a couple of weeks ago a gunman from the West Bank come into Tel Aviv, opening fire at a couple of people who were outside a cafe in central Tel Aviv. None of them were killed at the time. All of them were wounded. But Tel Aviv is often the centre of terror attacks when violence here in Israel and the West Bank does come to the forefront.
And Ali, in your estimation, in your experience, is there likely to be retaliation now?
Well, what I know is that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, has called up all border police reserves tonight. That does tend to point towards the fact that they are worried about further terror attacks. Will there be escalation? Yeah, I think, of course, that as a result of any terror attack, what you often get is a spiralling of events that take place immediately afterwards. Now, I think from reports from Tel Aviv tonight, the gunman has been what the police would describe as neutralised, which normally means shot dead. And that doesn't mean that a manhunt will ensue. But as I was saying, there was another terror attack in the West Bank earlier today. The gunman escaped from that, and there will be a manhunt that follows that. And whenever you get a manhunt, you get the possibility of further violence going forward. So yeah, I do not think this is the end of it for any moment.
OK, Ali, for the moment, thank you very much. Alistair Bunkle there, our Middle East correspondent, reporting from Jerusalem on this latest story. 1 person killed and 6 wounded in a terror attack in Tel Aviv. This is Sky News at 9 o'clock. The headlines this evening. Terror attack in Tel Aviv. Officials in the city say a foreign tourist has died after a vehicle attack. 6 others have been injured. Tonight, there are heightened tensions in the Middle East as it's confirmed 2 sisters shot in the West Bank were British nationals. Labour released a second advert attacking Rishi Sunak hours after being accused of gutter politics for a previous post. Police in Northern Ireland warn of potential terror attacks on Monday, the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. S Club 7 singer Paul Casamol has died unexpectedly at the age of 46. And against the odds, we meet Harry, the miracle baby, born to a cancer survivor with no ovaries. Good evening. We start with breaking news. 1 person has been killed and 6 have been injured after a terror attack in Tel Aviv. Ambulance officials say the victims were foreign tourists. Reports from police suggest a vehicle may have been used to hit pedestrians and people in the street. Well, it comes hours after the Foreign Office has confirmed 2 sisters who were killed by a Palestinian gunman in the West Bank were British nationals, with a 3rd person seriously injured. Our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, joins us live from Jerusalem. Ali, what more can you tell us?
Well, this attack happened within the last 90 minutes. Details are still coming through, but we can confirm that 1 person has died. At least 5 people have been wounded. We understand that the man who has been killed in this terrorist attack was an Italian tourist, and it sounds as though the wounded as well were all tourists visiting Israel over the Passover period. Let me just read you something that police in Tel Aviv have sent out, which gives a little bit of detail from their perspective as to what happened. They said a police officer who was at a nearby gas station heard a noise and noticed a car upside down and several people lying on the floor. The policeman approached the car together with the Tel Aviv municipality police inspectors and recognized that the driver was trying to reach for the weapon he had in his possession. The policeman and inspectors neutralized the driver and killed him. 1 man was killed, as I said, I think this Italian man, and a woman was moderately injured, and 2 others were slightly injured. So details at the moment are still very much coming in, but what is very clear is this is another terrorist attack in Israel, the 2nd terrorist attack on Israeli citizens today. The first came earlier this morning in the occupied Palestinian West Bank, when a Palestinian gunman opened fire on a car containing 3 Israelis, shot the car and then rammed the car. 2 young women died. They were sisters, and the mother was airlifted to hospital in a serious condition. Now, we've had it confirmed to us by British diplomats here in Jerusalem that those women were also British passport holders, and they're the latest victims of terror attacks. And it comes at a time when tensions here are incredibly high. Yesterday, rockets were fired from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. The Israeli military have blamed that on factions of Hamas, a Palestinian militant group, and as a result, overnight and in the early hours of this morning, airstrikes were carried out on Gaza and on southern Lebanon to hit Hamas targets. So what we see at the moment is a coming together of the 3 major religions in Jerusalem, Christianity, Judaism and Islam, with Ramadan, Passover and Easter. And it's creating, as was anticipated, a lot of tension within Jerusalem in particular, but within wider Israel and the West Bank. And the security forces were already on high alert. The number of security forces in Jerusalem have been bolstered significantly approaching this period, and they were aware that terror attacks might happen, and as we are seeing tonight, that is exactly what has been borne out.
And Ali, in your estimation, what has caused this latest escalation in attacks and violence?
Well, look, to be honest, if you try and sort of date back where these terror attacks sort of start, then you can go back many years. But I would go back as far as the beginning of the year, where we have seen a major escalation in violence, particularly Israeli military raids into West Bank towns and cities, places like Nablus and Jenin, a lot of the time during daytime, and that has resulted in big firefights between Palestinians and Israeli forces. And then if you come forward to the last couple of days, Israeli police have gone into the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound behind me, the third most holy site in Islam, in order to try and clear out Palestinian worshippers who they say were barricading themselves inside and stockpiling weapons like rocks and fireworks in order to attack Jews. It's impossible to pinpoint, where it starts, where it finishes, what the motivation is behind these attacks. It is almost always a general uptick and spiraling. It's momentum that carries these things forward, and you find that they, when you get one attack, another attack might happen as a result. And I think what we've seen in the last 72 hours or so is an uptick in violence. And whatever the motivation behind the attack in Tel Aviv tonight, whether it has its roots in the violence in Al-Aqsa, whether it has its roots in the violence in the West Bank, we'll have to wait and see. But these things are all wrapped up together in what is a pretty small and pretty intense sort of society.
Alistair, for the moment, thank you. Alistair Bunkle there, our Middle East correspondent in Jerusalem. Well, earlier I was joined by former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Danny Ayalon, who gave us his reaction to this latest terror attack.
We have been seeing this wave of Palestinian terror for the last year, basically, and we see them by ramming and by shooting and explosions and all that. We actually, turn our complaints to the Palestinian Authority, but to no avail, because they are hardly in charge. And basically today, we have the West Bank as a hotbed of terror, and we see incitement coming from Hamas. And the mastermind of all, unfortunately, is Iran, which is trying to coordinate all these attacks. And Hezbollah in the north and Hamas and the Islamic Jihad are all their proxies. So we are in the midst of a real wave of terrorism, and we just have to defend ourselves.
OK, we've lost the sound on that earlier interview that I did with Daniel Ayalon. Hopefully we'll be able to bring you the full interview as soon as possible. But he was, of course, reacting to that latest terrorist attack in Tel Aviv this evening, in which one person has been killed and 6 others injured. We'll, of course, keep you updated on that story as it develops. In the meantime, let's take you to some other news now. And Labour is facing accusations of gutter politics over a series of tweets about the Prime Minister. The first claimed Rishi Sunak does not think child sex abusers should go to prison. And a second said he doesn't think adults convicted of possessing a gun with intent to harm should be locked up either. Our political correspondent Ali Fortescue reports.
Whilst he may be